will report the title of the bill, designate the Senate amendment, and designate the motion.
H.R. 3684, an act to authorize funds for federal aid highways, highway safety programs, and transit programs, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to House Resolution 601, the motion shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure or their respective designees. The gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio, and the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Graves, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Oregon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to insert extraneous material on the measure under consideration, H.R. 3684.
The gentleman will suspend. The clerk will designate the motion.
Mr. DeFazio moves that the House concur in the Senate amendment to H.R. 3684.
The gentleman is recognized.
Am I recognized?
The gentleman is recognized.
Okay, thank you. I yield myself 5 minutes. Americans are tired of potholes damaging their cars, failing bridges, decrepit transit, trains that derail, water mains that explode, sewer systems that back up into their basements and pollute our rivers. More than 70% of Americans strongly support a major federal investment in rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. The last major increase in federal support for infrastructure was during the Clinton administration's first term, the first term of the Clinton administration. Then President Bush did nothing on the issue. President Obama came in talking about infrastructure investment. He passed a American Recovery Act that invested 4% of all that money in infrastructure. I worked with Chairman Jim Oberstar. I chaired the subcommittee. We wrote a very ambitious surface transportation reauthorization, which he had been promised by the Obama administration would be next, but it wasn't. They pulled the plug. And then came President Trump, the builder. He invited a large group of us down to the White House. We had a long discussion, and we agreed, and finally at the end he turned to the speaker and he says, Nancy, how much do you need? And she says, 1.5 trillion, Mr. President. He says, no, 1.8. No, 2 sounds better, 2 trillion. Okay, we agreed to come back in 3 weeks and hammer out the details. We came back in 3 weeks. He walked into the room. He had a hissy fit, slammed the door, walked out, and that was the end of it, except for the 7 fake infrastructure weeks during the Trump administration. Now, the House, on the 1st of July, passed the INVEST Act, a bill that went through a real legislative process. Hours in committee, amendments. Hours on the floor, amendments. That was the bill the country most needed for the 21st century infrastructure. And I had hoped to go to conference with the Senate, actually go through a legislative process. Pretty darn rare around here these days, the way things should work, the way they're supposed to work under the Constitution. Unfortunately, because of the Senate filibuster, that wasn't to happen. So this president rolled up his sleeves and he waded in because he promised to get infrastructure done. And he negotiated first with one group of Republicans. That didn't work. He then found another group, mostly Republicans, 2 Democrats, and spent endless hours between the White House and that group negotiating a bipartisan infrastructure bill. And in the end, when that bill came to the floor of the Senate, 19 Republican senators voted for it. 19 Republican senators voted for it. Here's a few things from the White House fact sheet on that bill. Makes the largest federal investment in public transit ever. Makes the largest federal investment in passenger rail since the creation of Amtrak. Makes the single largest dedicated bridge investment since the construction of the interstate highway system. Makes the largest investment in clean drinking water, wastewater infrastructure in American history, delivering clean water to millions of Americans. Ensures every American has access to reliable high-speed internet. Tackles the climate change with the largest investment in clean energy, EV infrastructure, electrifying thousands of school and transit buses, reconnecting communities, safe streets, $17 billion for ports, $25 for airports, This is what the president managed to negotiate with the recalcitrant Senate and get around the filibuster and get 19 Republican votes. This bill is not perfect. It's not the bill that I would have written. But, you know, I oppose their decision not to correct decade-long cuts of bus program, bus provision creating a dedicated set-aside for polluting buses within the low and no emission program. That's kind of laughable. And the failure to tighten Buy America requirements for transit rolling stock, further crackdown on predatory Chinese state-owned enterprises, which was in our bill, the omission of the investments in Fix It First, and mandatory greenhouse gas reductions. I will continue to work on addressing these issues. But the reality today before us is this is the only option with an evenly divided Senate and the stupid rules of the Senate, including the filibuster. So it's this or nothing on the long overdue investment in America's infrastructure. I hope the Republicans on the other side will support it, and if they don't, I would like them to tell us exactly what they would do. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.